Hello, my friends. Welcome to Back to Heart. I am your host, Cierra Dae. It's nice to be back here with you guys. In your time, it's probably been a week or two since we have had a podcast episode. In my time, I recorded 2 episodes this week already. So this is the 3rd episode. I'm feeling very inspired and motivated and also very vocal and verbal this week. So using that to my advantage and getting out the episodes that I've been wanting to get out. This week, I am finally getting to the inner child, which is one of the root pieces of my work that I've worked with clients with and that I have a personal passion about because I've been a nanny for years and I've worked with families for a long time and I've worked with littles for a very long time. So working with littles, it gives me a lot of insight into the heart of the child and what children are and who they are and how we parent them, how it affects them, and how we raise them and how we interact with them and how that affects them. And seeing that firsthand in real time, both like through my own actions and also through the actions and behaviors of parents and other caregivers, that's given me a lot of insight into the inner child and now being able to see that, how that comes out in other people and adults. So we're going to talk today about what it is, because this can be a very new concept for some people. For others, it is a popular, newish concept online and through social media that a lot of people are doing a lot of healing behind, which is so beautiful, and I love to see it. But regardless of where you land on the spectrum, I think it can be helpful to hear another person's insight and point of view and perspective and get a little bit more of an understanding on the inner child and maybe how it is affecting your life. Maybe one thing I say will bring up some reflection in your own behaviors or needs of your own inner child, and it can help you in your healing journey. So I thought today would be a fitting time to talk about this. It is late again. It seems to be that the best time for me to record a podcast is after 9 p.m. So it is a little bit later here for me. So I was able to go throughout my day all day today. And this morning I had a therapy session. So I have been doing EMDR therapy for over a year now. EMDR is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy. So the intention of this therapy is to help you to reprocess traumatizing experiences or moments in your life, or to give you an opportunity to reprocess beliefs that feel stuck or stubborn, and just feel like they're deeply affecting your day-to-day or deeply affecting things in your life that you want to change or to create a better or healthier trajectory. And so I've been in EMDR therapy for over a year. My therapist that I work with, I see her twice a month, and I don't always do EMDR therapy. Sometimes we just do talk therapy because I like to talk, and it's helpful for me to have another person who is not really biased and can give me very grounded advice or grounded perspective and to get some feedback there. But we do a lot of EMDR therapy, and I've done a lot of reprocessing, and it's been so helpful. I highly recommend therapy, especially for longer periods of time, so that it gives you it gives you a relationship that feels safe. Because when you find a new therapist, it takes time to build a connection and build a relationship. But once you have that relationship built, I've been working with her for a little over 3 years on and off. Consecutively, I've been going to her for a year. So we have this relationship built, and it's been very helpful in feeling safe in an environment enough to reprocess these experiences in my life that have created belief systems that I feel like have held me back or held me down. I've been through, like most of us, a very challenging upbringing, and had a lot of dysfunction in the family unit. So with that, it created a lot of belief structures and systems and parts of myself that just need a lot of tenderness and care and compassion. And so EMDR has been a very helpful modality for this. Within EMDR, EMDR looks different for everyone, and in each session, it's looked very different for me. Some sessions are very intense and very vivid. Other sessions feel less vivid visually, like I don't have as many visual processes. It's more of like a feelings, or I hear things like thoughts. And so with this, with everyone else's experience, you're going to have different things that come up. You can do your own individual research on EMDR. I'm not specifically talking about EMDR today. I just am giving some backstory leading up to my experience today. But in today's session, because I have this background with the inner child work, how my mind processes and reprocesses traumatic memories and experiences, I'm typically reconnecting with my inner child to give her the things that she needed in each moment. So inner child work may not come up with you within EMDR because it may not be something that you have experience with, but it has been really helpful to have this tool. I have a bunch of different tools in my healing tool belt, inner child being one of them. And the inner child, I think, is especially helpful because this is usually the root of most of these belief systems. And so doing parts work with our inner thoughts and mindsets and mind is very helpful, and really, really gives me the sense of safety and calm that I'm searching for in most of these experiences. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience with my inner child reprocessing today, and then I will talk a little bit about what the inner child is. Actually, let's reverse that. I'm going to talk a little bit about what the inner child is, and then I'll go into my experience of reprocessing some belief systems today using inner child work. So what is the inner child, since I've just been talking about it for the opening of this podcast episode? The inner child, so our mind, our psyche, is made up of a bunch of different parts, and we, throughout our experience, our personality and the way that we function in the world is built partly by how we are interacted with. So in the early years of our life, in this lifetime, we are learning what connection is and what safety is and what discipline is through the actions and behaviors of our parents and our environment and our surroundings and the people around us. And through the lens of a young child, we typically have a very naive framework. And so these belief systems are built within our psyche and typically come with us throughout the years from that naive and that immature space, now integrating in an unconscious way. So it's stored in the unconscious or the subconscious mind, and we create these patterns of behavior that is acted out from the inner child, from the space of the inner child unconsciously, because it's stored in that space in order to keep us safe or help us to feel loved, or whatever the circumstances may be. So inner child healing is going in and being able to give our inner child what they are needing in each moment to meet those different needs or desires, or just to meet them in the way that they are craving to be met, in a way that is healthier and from a step above the maturity level where they are currently at. So when I speak about the inner child is not all of who we are. There's a lot of resistance to working with the inner child for a lot of people, especially if you don't really work with children, because when I say like we need to heal our inner child or we need to give space for our inner child, one, it sounds really abstract, like talking to your inner child as if you're like talking to some being who isn't there or doesn't exist. And it can feel a little bit silly, honestly. It's like, if you're being introduced to affirmations for the first time, and a lot of advice you get on that is saying it to yourself in the mirror. At first, it feels really silly. I remember the first time that I did it in the mirror, I think it was 2017. I felt so awkward saying anything to myself in the mirror. It felt very strange. But there's these spaces that we get to unconsciously where we are talking to ourselves. We are talking to ourselves constantly in our heads. We are enacting out silly scenarios. Sometimes people talk to themselves, processing out scenarios that they may have made up in their head where they're trying to anticipate some type of experience at work or with a coworker or with a spouse or something. So we have these moments of interaction with ourselves that is usually coming from an unconscious place. But then when we bring consciousness or awareness to it, we might feel a little bit silly because we're witnessing ourselves in this interaction now because it's done from a more intentional space. But doing it in a healthier space is very, very helpful for our healing body and heart and mind, because it gives us an opportunity to connect with these pieces with ourselves that have gone years or lifetimes without being addressed and being cared for. So sorry, I'm looking at notes over here. I'm not wearing my glasses. I should probably put those on if you're watching the YouTube video and you're wondering what I'm looking at. I had to write down notes for myself so that I didn't get off track. So how the inner child interacts in our day-to-day life, like I was saying earlier, like it's the subconscious mind. So it's going to come up very typically unconsciously, and it's coming up in spaces where we are emotionally triggered. So there are different pieces and roles that the inner child plays. So our inner child is constantly seeking out love, connection, and safety. If these were not met in our earlier years of our experience, or even our later years in our experience, then we are feeling some kind of need or desire surfacing that we then make decisions or actions based off of those fears that we are not going to be met in that way. And so there's this like clinging to what is or what is not. So they may do this by acting out experiences or behaviors that are familiar for them. And so it gives them maybe that familiarity, maybe safety, or maybe safe for them to feel. These behaviors may also be creating some kind of pattern that is trying to receive something that they didn't receive, some kind of connection or love that they didn't receive. And so they don't know what it's like to receive that. So they put themselves in patterns of sabotage or withholding themselves from experiences in order to, again, create that familiarity. So when we're recognizing our inner child, we're learning how to better support them and understand them. If you have not worked with children, or don't often, even if you're a parent and like you just don't have a lot of experience with children, we're usually just now interacting with kids and interacting with ourselves and our people around us from a space of assumption around what children are, without actually giving the space to learn who they are as a whole. And I don't mean children individually, which is also very important, but I mean as a whole, like in humanity, human children, little tiny baby humans, not just babies, but all of the different years of humans. What does their spirit possess? What does their heart possess? Like who are they beyond the layers of personality? And this allows us to connect into compassion with these beings. I've come across many people who don't like children, who don't like to be around children, because there's a part of their own inner child that is wounded and felt rejected as a child. And so a big heart of my own work is to help people to come back to that inner child, to learn how to love them at the individual level, learn how to love ourselves again, so that we can give more compassion for our own children. It gives a lot more space when we're offering healing for our own inner child, because we're recognizing that we deserve all of the things that we did not receive. We deserve the love. We deserved the space. We deserve the patience. We deserve the compassion. We deserve the understanding. And I'm not saying any of this to shame any of your parents or any of you as parents. If you still feel in that place of unconscious action or unconscious behaviors, there's more that goes into our personality and our experiences, depending on your trauma and depending on your experience. There's a lot of reality that, you know, like mental illness runs in my family, and like there's depression, there's PTSD, bipolar, ADHD. So I've seen firsthand how this affects people and how it can be a very, very painful process to go through, even when you're aware of it, and how challenging it can be to change it. So inner child work is just one piece of a potential healing journey and healing tool. There can be a variety of different tools for this. EMDR, like I was talking about earlier, is a part of it as well. And this podcast is to help give you different tools. Like I had another earlier episode with my friend Ambrosia Owen talking about art therapy and how that can be beneficial to children and adults alike. So lots of different tools. I'm not saying any of this to shame you from where you are now. Let yourself be in where you are. A very important part of all of this work, especially inner child work, is learning how to come into acceptance, because we can't heal coming from a place of shame. That I don't consider that healing if you're just shaming yourself into changing. I would just consider that a longing to be something different because you don't like who you are, and therefore you're not good enough or you are too much. And so when we're learning how to come into self-acceptance, we're able to embrace these pieces of us that we may be wanting to cast aside and to get out of our personality or to get out of our life. A big piece of inner child work for me is giving space for those emotions to experience and to come through, but giving it a safe space to happen, and giving them the appropriate language and giving them the appropriate movement, so that it is not harming your relationships or yourself, and it's not harming your relationship to other people. So there's different parts of inner child work, and there's different parts of learning how to support your inner child. And one of this is learning how to nurture them. So this is the connection component, giving into them, really filling up their cup. This can be through what a lot of people identify as play. You know, like when you're thinking about the inner child, a lot of people think about the play component because children are very playful, and it is a part of inner child work, but it's not the only piece of inner child work. Some people need it more than others. You know, some people had a lot of freedom to play, and they could be very themselves, and they could explore art, and they could explore climbing things and being curious about things. Other children had a more strict and rigid upbringing, and so that may be a bigger wound for them that they need to focus on. So the children with free play and free expression may need more help around other areas of inner child support, also known as reparenting. So one of the things of one of the components of reparenting is the nurturing or connection component. But there may be another part of inner child healing, of reparenting, that they need, which is discipline. And so if you had the free play and the free expression, you may need more healing around self-discipline, because there wasn't a lot of discipline in your life. Maybe your parents had to work a lot, or maybe your parents partied, or they drank a lot and they had problems with addiction, and they didn't really have a lot of time or mental and physical energy to help to guide you, to learn, like teach you boundaries. And so then you have to teach that to yourself. Whereas the person who had more of the rigid and structured upbringing needs to learn how to give themselves a little bit more grace and space to be imperfect. And then there's another component that kind of ties into the discipline piece with the boundary thing, but the other component is learning how to give ourselves the feeling of safety. So this is a bonding component. This is another component of connection, but giving ourselves a true sense of safety. This can be very, very important for people with like big T traumas as children who have gone through sexual abuse, physical assault, or physical abuse. But it can also be, children who may have gone through emotional abuse and didn't feel safe in their home, didn't feel like they could express themselves. If you had an authoritarian parent and you were yelled at, if you expressed emotion, there may be a feeling of resistance to express and to be yourself, and to be real and vulnerable. So nurturing, safety, and discipline. These are all very, very important to the inner child to give them what we need. And the reality of raising children is that we are coming into more understanding of the human mind and of the human psyche. And we are coming into more understanding of what children need. And in some ways, we're like coming back into our intuitive knowing, where like we've lost a lot of pieces that our ancestors really knew how to raise babies, like having them close, being able to tune into them in the ways that they needed to be tuned into emotionally and physically, where now we live in a capitalistic society where everything is so fast that it can be really challenging to meet the needs of a child in that same way. And so with that, we're going to have imperfection in raising our own children, and our parents had their imperfections in raising us. And so our responsibility now as an adult is to go in to support ourselves in the ways that our parents didn't know how or couldn't. This always reminds me of the quote from the Bible, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do," or don't do in this case. So forgive our parents, forgive the adults in our life who didn't know how to support us, who didn't know how to nurture us, who didn't know how to discipline us, who didn't know how to give us a sense of safety, because they were never given that. And we're fortunately, I think, we're turning a new leaf, and we're coming into a new generation that is learning that we deserve all of this love and compassion, and now we get to give this to ourselves. So that was a little bit about the inner child. I didn't talk too much about how we do this work and how we nurture our inner child. There's a bunch of different ways. And one of these ways is through visualizations, which is what I worked with clients. And I still do some one-off visualization. So if this is something that you're curious about, please reach out to me and we can talk about what you are looking for. But one of the ways that I worked with my inner child today specifically was in my EMDR session, and it was through a visualization. So EMDR isn't specific to visualizations, like I was saying, but in this one, I was having a lot of memories coming up and visualizations because I was reprocessing a specific belief pattern that I have been having for, I would say, past couple of months. It's been a recurring belief system my whole life, but the past couple of months, it's been surfacing like very loudly and very blatantly. When I have belief systems, they're usually very, like I said, unconscious. And so I don't really know what exactly the belief is. It's not very blatant. It's just I'm behaving in a certain way. I'm making choices based off of what I believe about myself. But in the past couple of months, I have had this reoccurring belief saying, like repeating in my head, "You're an idiot." And it's not something like I've done a lot of work around my own confidence and self-esteem. And it's not something that I feel like I truly believe. And yet it's still been something that it feels like it's very rooted into a lot of my personality. And personality is ever growing and ever changing, and something that we can change and we can make an impact on if there's parts of ourselves that we would like to see moving differently. But this one, I have tried to do some of my own work on it, of like reassuring myself, like, Cierra, you are capable and you are so smart and you are so loving, and all of these things to help to reverse some of this this belief pattern. Done my own journaling, blah, 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 all the things. And I've gotten to the point where I was like, okay, I need some support from my therapist. Let's dig into this. Let's see where either where it's rooted in, or how I can support myself and whatever part of me is needing some type of reassurance and love in this moment. So we went into the EMDR session. The way that EMDR works, it's different with each therapist. Some therapists use a finger, so it's eye movement, to help to create. It helps to put you in like a space of ease. There's more science that goes behind it that I've done my research on it personally, but to regurgitate it, I'm not in like the best space to do that right now. So you can read up. Maybe I'll post an article about it in the show notes so that you can get more information on it. But a lot of therapists use their finger in front of the client's face, and the client will follow the finger back and forth. They will move it to the left and to the right to help to get this eye movement happening. So this creates some type of release in the brain, because you are using both the left and right hemispheres of your brain. And so you're not getting stuck in just the logical or the emotional space, and you're able to process a little bit more efficiently whatever is coming up. Again, I don't personally do this work, so I don't know exactly the the science behind it, but I will post the link. So my therapist, we've tried it in a few different ways, and I found what works best for me is having my hands on my lap and patting back and forth, doing a left and right patting throughout the whole session. She has a metronome sound. She can speed it up, she can slow it down depending on what feels best for me. The patting on the legs has the same effect as the eye movement. They realized through a few studies that you don't need to just move your eyes. It's just about the left and right hemispheres of the brain. So if you're patting your legs with the left and the right, or you can pat on your chest, it doesn't matter. Regardless, you just have to use the left and the right side of your body. So that is what works best for me. So I like to have my eyes closed. It helps me to visualize a little bit better. When I have my eyes open, I get distracted. So having my eyes closed and patting on my legs is how we start the session. And then we will focus on the belief that I had. And then in this session, it was, I'm an idiot, or you're an idiot. It's oscillating. It's going between those of like, you're an idiot, I'm an idiot, you're an idiot, I'm an idiot. And it's like these different parts of myself, like talking to each other. We've done a brief session on this prior in the past. So I already had some memories that I brought up in the past visualization, but we didn't have enough time in a previous session to finish it. So we kind of brought up some of those and focused in on those feelings in my body and what they felt like. And then throughout the session, you allow your mind essentially to wander. You start from this place of whatever belief system or emotion you want to focus on, and then you allow your mind to take you into whatever areas it feels like there's some kind of connection with that belief pattern. And so I went through a journey. In my last session, it was connected to my siblings. So we had pretty intense arguments when we were younger that were very unhealthy, and we were very unkind to each other. And I had a lot of feelings of guilt and shame, because these were things that I would say to my siblings of, you're an idiot and you're stupid, and all of these things that I now would like never say to a person. But we're young, and again, I didn't have the language, didn't have the tools. So I went through that process of like moving through the guilt and the shame of saying that to my siblings, but also receiving that from the same things from them. And then in this session today, I was moving through a few different things, but one of the one of the big things that came up, I saw myself in this room that was this big empty white space, which I think is connecting back to my own personal visualizations that I do for clients. And I saw my 8-year-old self there. I don't know how she was 8, but I just knew that she was 8. When you start to do this work and you start to work within your mind, you stop questioning so much of the things that you quote unquote like know intuitively. When I first began this work, I would really doubt myself and question like, how old should I be? Is this the right age? Is this the child that I should be seeing? Did it start any sooner than this? There's a lot more self-trust that develops. So I just knew that she was 8 and she was staring off into the distance. I was walking up as my adult self and I was coming up behind her, and I could see the back of her head, and I was coming up and around her. And even as I was coming up and around her and was coming into her field of vision, she was still looking forward and like looking past me, like not even recognizing that I had approached. It was like she was stuck in this trance-like state. And as she was in this trance-like state, she was just repeating, "You're an idiot, you're an idiot, you're an idiot, you're an idiot," like over and over and over again. And I was trying to get her attention, and I was trying to like, my adult self was like, I know what to do. I know how to reparent. And I'm like, let me just give you love. And I'm like trying to hug her and like trying to like sit, like make eye contact with her and like connect with her. But it was like she was in a state of shock, and I couldn't get in. I couldn't reach her. And so then I went through a reprocessing of memories. Then it brought me back. Because it was like that just felt stuck. There wasn't anything that I could do with her right in that moment. And then I went through a reprocessing of other memories that I had in my past where I felt that experience of, I'm an idiot. Like I'm not capable of this. I can't do this. I can't do what I want to do because I can't reach my potential. And this was many different variety of things. This had associations with school, and schoolwork, even though like I had done okay in school. I had done well. I wasn't a straight A student, but I was usually like A, B student. I had like maybe 2 C's in school. Both of them were math related. I just struggled. And some of them were more, on the academic side. Some of them were in my relational experiences with my family. Some of them were in romantic relationships. And so going through those memories, I was able to then come back and eventually I was able to find a thread of connection with my inner child, my 8-year-old self, where I could reach her. And she finally looked at me and we made eye contact. And when we made eye contact, I was like, okay, I'm in. She can hear me, or at least see me and see that I'm talking. And maybe that will give her an opportunity to hear me. And so I got down on her level and I told her like she had stopped the trans-like repeating of the "you're an idiot." She started doing for a little bit of time before I was able to reach her. It converted to "I'm an idiot." So it went from "you're an idiot" on repeat to "I'm an idiot" and repeat. So then I noticed that there was a shifting of identity of like, okay, this isn't about her. I'm trying to find the words for it. Sometimes this healing is wordless, but she's not like projecting outwardly what she's feeling. Now she's able to identify that with herself and me. So we're talking about my experience. I'm able to identify that I am feeling like an idiot. And so then finally she made the eye contact. I was able to get down on her level. And I looked at her and I told her, like, you're not an idiot. What makes it like these experiences do not make you an idiot. And so I took her hand and I asked her, I was like, would you come with me? I will show you. And so she took me by the hand, and then she ended up wanting a piggyback. So I gave her a piggyback ride. And in my mind's experience, we started walking through these memories and these experiences where I did not feel like an idiot, where I felt powerful, where I felt intelligent. You know, this was graduating high school. This was working a job while also working while going through high school. This was doing online work. I graduated high school online, and so I had to put in a lot of personal dedication and had a lot of responsibility. And so like that made me feel very powerful. There were experiences in my relationship where I was very attuned to the relationship, and I showed up in a way that was like very mature and very loving. And so I felt very powerful there. And so we walked through all of these experiences together. And with each one, I could feel her feeling less and less like an idiot and less resistant to believing me. And eventually we got to a place where she trusted me and trusted to hear me. And I gave her a lot of loving affirmations, the things that she needed to hear in that moment, that she was incredibly capable. And even if she can't do things correctly in the way that other people want her to be doing them, it doesn't mean that she's stupid, or it doesn't mean that she is not capable of performing incredible and beautiful things and making incredible and beautiful things in this lifetime. There was also a piece of her that was feeling a lot of shame around feeling like she wasn't living up to her potential. Like she felt like an idiot because she did not live out the life that she felt like her parents wanted for her, which was like, you know, the typical dreams for your child of like becoming a doctor or a lawyer. Those were the things that I as a child thought that I had to be in order to feel lovable or achieved or successful and to not feel like an idiot. And so because I've done neither of those things and I have absolutely no desire to be either of those things, I was able to ask her, it was like, do you want to be a doctor? And she said, no, I want to be a singer. Because at that time, that's what she wanted to be. When she was 8 years old, I wanted to be a singer, and I wanted to perform, and I wanted to be in front of people. I just wanted to express. I wanted people to hear me. And that's not what I want anymore, but that's truly me at my core, of like this creative and expressive person who is really functioning through art, through expression. And so when she identified of like, oh, I don't actually want to be a doctor, I don't want to be a lawyer. So if I don't want that and I'm not pursuing that doesn't make me an idiot. That just means that I'm following what I am wanting and desiring out of life. So we ended up, my therapist helped to lead me into giving her the closure that she needed in that moment. And so we just like spent some time reconnecting with her, and we had more of a playful ending where we climbed up a tree. We like this really, really tall pine tree looking out like this beautiful scenery, this mountain scenery, which is where I feel very, I don't know, there's something within me that feels very at home in the mountains and in fresh air and outside in trees. It's how I kind of grew up. So going up there and being with her was really beautiful. And the last thing that we said when we were closing out the session, that I was talking to my inner child, I asked her, I was like, so if you're not an idiot, what are you? And she says, I'm a dragon, because nobody expects dragons to be smart, but they're still powerful. And it was a really, I ended up laughing in the session because it was a really funny thing to hear coming from my inner child, because when you're moving through these experiences, you think you have control over what's happening in the mind space. But when you learn how to let the mind travel freely, it truly has a mind of its own. And so hearing this from my inner child really helped me to remember that there is this child piece of me that I can really get some wisdom from, honestly. It's not just me healing her all of the time. Like, she knows, there's a piece of me that knows deep down what I am needing and that I am powerful. And she has these pockets and these little pieces of wisdom that she can give to me to help remind me in these moments when I'm needing that little boost of motivation or a little reminder of who I am and what I'm capable of. And, you know, I think my mind helped to create this, because if you've been to any of my kids' classes, I do the dragon's breath, where we take a deep breath in and then we breathe out like a dragon. We stick out our tongue and we breathe out with fire. And so there's this association with power in that for me, and working with kids and working in my kids' classes. And so my mind, I think, had built that connection and had brought it to my inner child to remind her that she can be a dragon whenever she wants to feel powerful and in control. And I can do that too. And so I had this takeaway for myself that I am powerful. I'm not an idiot. I am not an idiot. I am powerful. I am powerful. I am powerful. So this was my little story on my inner child work today. There's a lot more in that EMDR session that I just don't have time for. It was like an hour-long EMDR session. So I don't know if we took it. Some of that was talk therapy, but it was a lot. So like sitting for even 30 minutes in your own mind space, for me, there's like a lot of thoughts and a lot of memories and visions that come through and come up. So there's a lot of processing that happens. But this is a piece of my inner child healing experience. I've been doing this for years now, and there's a lot of different tools that I've used to do inner child healing that I've worked with clients on. We do journaling, we do physical exercises where I help them to move their body. Visualization is a big one. I think it's especially important to bridge the connection with the inner child to help to give them a voice. But this can be also done through visualization. There's plant medicines that people do to work with the inner child. And then there's play. There's the play component in my classes that and doing my bubble fun. I'm known as like the local bubble fairy. So I bring bubbles to a lot of communities and a lot of people to help to encourage the inner child play component. So many different ways to work with the inner child. And there's not just one key answer. You know, you don't do one journal entry and you're like, I'm healed. My inner child is forever feeling secure and loved and supported. This is a lifelong journey, because we're learning and we're unlearning. We're unlearning what we had been taught, what things were or weren't, and we're learning what we may be needing and what we have to give ourselves. And we're also learning how to relate to other people simultaneously. And it's fucking hard. Like, talking to parents who are going through this journey while they are parents. I have been fortunate enough to be able to do this work before I've had children, but a lot of you are going through this while alongside your children, while raising children. And it's okay that you don't know how to do it all the time. And it's okay that it takes time, and that there is no final destination. You know, an ideal place to be is where we feel safe and secure enough and regulated in our own bodies to be able to show up for our kids. But it takes time, and it takes patience, and it takes understanding. So give yourself this space. A lot of like what's very helpful to get to the space of the inner child is learning how to meditate, learning mindfulness. I have previous episodes on mindfulness and emotional intelligence, which I highly recommend going back and listening to, because learning how to be present is a very important aspect of getting in touch with our inner child. Because if we can't be present with our inner child, it's very hard to give them what they're needing, because that's typically a big part of what they're needing. They're needing connection. They're needing somebody to be present enough to recognize them in that moment and be able to attune to whatever their needs are. So yeah, go back and listen to those episodes. If you guys have any questions about the inner child, or if you would like to do a session together on an inner child visualization, I would love to support you and help you in this. So please feel free to reach out. All of the information is in the show notes of how to reach me. Otherwise, if you have any questions, again, reach out to me and I can do a podcast episode about it. There is a forgiveness episode that I want to do specifically. I had somebody reach out about forgiving yourself if you've already moved through the parenting process and you feel like you messed up your kids. So I want to be doing I'm going to be doing a podcast episode on that, and I will be doing more from the recommendations or the desires from my community. So please reach out to me. Otherwise, I hope you guys are having a beautiful week, and I hope that your journey back to heart is not as painful, even though, you know, the reality is that coming back to heart is pain, because coming back to heart is experiencing the spectrum of the human emotion and the human experience. So let yourself be in that, and I will talk to you all soon.